Hello my friends, welcome back to this channel. My name is Hannah, I am the face behind Pages and Pearls, and here I talk all about my knitting, sometimes about books and my writing. And today I have a very classic podcast episode for you. So we're gonna get into finished objects, all the things that are on my needles right now. After a summer of not knitting very much at all, I'm now feeling that I'm fully back in the swing of things and just very full of knitting inspiration and energy. So I have a few things on my needles, and at the end I'll also give a few recommendations as always, book related, YouTube channels related, whatever things are coming to mind in that respective month. So yeah, feel free to grab your project and knit along as you're watching. Make yourself a nice cup of tea if you want, and let's get started. Alright, just telling you what I'm drinking, because I always like talking about these things. I am having this fruit tea that is called apple cider bobbing. It's by the brand Bird and Blend Tea. It's a very nice tea, very appley and very much fitting to October. Today is the 6th of October, I believe. And I'm trying to lean as much as possible into the autumn vibes. Although leaning almost sounds like I need to make an effort. There is no effort involved. It's just I'm inspired by the change of the seasons right now, and I'm really happy that we are, apples are back in season, and pumpkins, and the leaves haven't started turning color yet, but I think it'll happen soon. Anyway, that's what I'm drinking. This cup is one that I made. Well, I didn't make the cup myself, but I painted it myself over a year ago now, but it was a very fun experience. I kind of like this pottery painting thing. I feel like I should do it again, because it was a lot of fun. But anyways, you can see that I'm quite rambly today, so let's see how this episode goes, but I'll go into the knitting. Let's just get into that. First thing is what I'm wearing. Actually, this is my first finished object, and this is the Dad Sweater by Emily Curtis, who is also a Gently Chaotic Knits here on YouTube. I would highly recommend her channel. I always really enjoy watching her project updates. But anyways, this is one of her designs. It's something that I've been wanting to knit for a very long time already. I bought this yarn about one and a half years ago, and I never got around to it. So now I'm really happy that I finally knit the sweater, and it was basically the bigger garment that brought me back into knitting after my kind of knitting slump in the summer. I really sped through this. I think it took me maybe like 2.5 weeks, or not even, to knit this entire sweater, which is pretty fast for me, also because I had other things going on at that time. It wasn't that I was just knitting. But yeah, I got really into it, and that's why I knitted so fast. Anyways, this Dad Sweater is a drop shoulder construction that you knit top down. I will talk a little bit more about the shoulder construction in a little bit, because that was quite interesting. And it's knit in a DK weight yarn. I knit the size 3, which gives me a bit less than the suggested amount of positive ease. But I didn't have enough yarn to meet the kind of like quantity for the next size. And also I'm kind of not sure how I feel about very oversized garments. I'm starting to think, maybe with a few exceptions, that I really like around 10 to 12 centimeters of positive ease, not more than 15. I have a few sweaters that have a little bit more than that, and they're okay, but most of the time I actually like it, yeah, definitely below these like hugely oversized sweaters that some designers, well, you can obviously always knit them with less positive ease, but yeah, I usually try to look at more 10 to 15 centimeters of positive ease. Anyway, so this is the size 3, and I knitted in 80k weight yarn as well. It was one strand of a yarn called Haiku Sueño Tweed, which is this really gorgeous tweed yarn. I'll just show you here a little bit closer. The colorway is called Comforting Cream. And as you can see, it's this really, really nice cream shade of yarn with very, very colorful specks of tweed, which is something that I really love. I love tweed yarn, and I really love when the tweed is not just shades of neutral, but really fun colors. And this yarn, I don't have the exact fiber content in mind, but I believe that it was somewhere around 70% superwash merino, and then the remaining 30% was viscose, and also the tweed naps are made out of viscose from bamboo, I think. So I haven't knit a superwash sweater in, I think the only superwash sweater that I knit was my very first one, and then afterwards I didn't. Not because that was a conscious choice, I think. I just I wanted to try different yarns, and I didn't, end up knitting a superwash sweater. So this was a new, or kind of almost like new experience. I have to say I enjoyed it. I think the viscose content in the yarn gave it a slightly drier feel than what I'm used to from superwash yarn that I knit socks with, for example. It was just a very interesting blend. I will see how it holds up. So far I've worn it out and about, I think 3 or 4 times, and I don't see any pilling yet, but obviously it's just been 3 or 4 times, so I think I have to observe a little bit more to see if this yarn pills a lot or not. But so far I'm really happy with it. It also didn't massively grow after I cast off, so it actually ended up being basically the size that I wanted and the fit that I wanted, which is great. I knitted basically, I think, all according to pattern, except for the thing that I by now always do, which is to knit the ribbing inside out. Because for me that just gives it a nicer, more polished look, I think. I can maybe show you here a bit better also on the sleeves. The hem, well, I have to really balance. But yeah, I just really like how this inside out rib turns out for me. That's the only modification that I did. For the rest, I knit the length according to pattern, everything else according to pattern, basically. And one thing that I found really cool that I wanted to talk about is actually the sleeve construction, because you knit from the top down, and you knit the back, then you knit the front, and then you join at the underarms, and have to pick up stitches for the shoulders, obviously. But it's not a classic kind of drop shoulder construction where then you just start knitting in the round, but there are actually short rows involved here to shape the shoulder a bit, and I feel like that gives you a little bit less fabric bunching up at the underarm, and just gives the sleeves a really nice shape. And I think, yeah, it was fun to learn that, or to see that new to me construction. And it's all very well explained in the pattern, so I would definitely also recommend the pattern, not only for how it looks like and the fit, but also for clarity and everything. I really enjoyed it. And I know that the pattern also comes with a kind of like modification guide if you want to knit it for a wider shoulder. So I don't know, I'm thinking maybe my partner at some point wants this kind of sweater, and then I could use that edition that comes with the pattern, which is quite cool. I always like when designers make these kind of patterns where it's one pattern, but you can make either it comes in different gauges, or different fit guides or modification guides. I always find that pretty cool. Yeah, so this is my finished dad sweater. I really like it. It's not too hot, but warm enough. I think the bamboo makes it a little bit more airy, and I'm just really happy with it, and I'm looking forward to wear it more this fall. Yeah. Okay, we're going to continue with Tweed. And this is my other finished object, the Snipped Socks by Helen Stewart. These socks are from the 52 Weeks of Socks Volume 1 book. It's one of the patterns in there, and actually the first pattern in there that I knit. I got this book for Christmas last year, and there are so many patterns in there that look gorgeous and that I really want to try out. And actually I cast on the first sock. I'm trying to see if I recognize it. Yeah. So this is the first sock that I knit, and I cast this on at the very beginning of January, my first sock of the year basically. And I knit it then, and I can show you maybe a little bit better here also. So the cool thing about this pattern is that it has this really gorgeous kind of lace pattern at the front. I hope you can see it here. This kind of zigzag motif, and then you also have a lace pattern that goes all the way down. I think here you see it better, down the foot as well, and it's mirrored on the other side. But essentially you have a really engaging leg, and then it gets more into a kind of like chill foot, which I think is a really nice combination. So yeah, as I was saying, I started this one in January, knit it in January, February, and then I didn't cast on the second sock until September, end of August. I mentioned this one in my last podcast episode, so it must have been end of August. And yeah, it was just, I was in a knitting slump. I knitted other socks in between. It was a very clear case of second sock syndrome, because I didn't really, usually I knit socks on the go. But I knew that I needed to be around the book. I needed to have the book close to knit the leg properly. Obviously you can always take a picture and then look at it on your phone, but that's not really comfortable. And since I already have the book, I usually knit patterns from like just opening them on my phone. And if I have a book, I really want to make use of that. So yeah. But then I injured my knee in August, so I was home a lot, and that's why I thought actually now is a good moment to cast on the second sock. So I'm happy that they're finally finished, because I'm really looking forward to wearing them. But there are a few things that I noticed. Nothing to do with the pattern. The pattern is very clear and very well written. There's a chart. I love knitting with charts. But there was so much time between me knitting these socks that I can really see that my gauge changed. Although I know obviously you use the same yarn, same needle, everything. I also counted the rows, and it's not that I just knit the foot longer. But if you can see that here, this bottom sock is definitely shorter than the top one. And I think it's really because my gauge relaxed. So I was very stressed last winter, and not in the very best place, I would say. And I think maybe that might have tightened up my tension a lot. Now over summer, several things happened. I can't talk about all of them yet. I will at some point, I think. But basically, I was more relaxed, not only because it was summer, but also because other things happened. And I think that kind of translated into how I knit these socks. So, I mean, you can even see it here. I knit the same amount of rows for the cuffs, and one of them is clearly a bit longer than the other. Again, probably just because of the gauge. When I have them on and I like pull them very tightly all the way up, you see that one is a tiny bit longer than the other one, but in general you don't see it so much. So I don't mind. I'm gonna wear them, and I'm really looking forward to wearing them just as much. But I found it very interesting how my kind of mental health and bodily state is kind of, yeah, slice of January, slice of August. Just interesting. I don't know. I didn't see this before so clearly. But yeah, the yarn that I used for this is a commercial sock yarn. It's from Rico, Superba 4-ply tweed, I think it is. I don't have the exact colorway. I don't remember it exactly, but I will put it in my Ravelry page for these socks. And also here, speaking of the tweed with fun specks, this is what it looks like. So it's this kind of dusty pink base color, and then you have the tweed specks in really kind of like bright, not bright, very saturated, like green, blue, yellow, red and purple. So it looks kind of like, I know that these are not all primary colors, but it's kind of, yeah, just very saturated tones. And I really like the combination. I also think it's kind of fun that I was knitting on these two tweed projects at once, and these are basically my two only finished objects for this episode. But yeah, I'm seeing a theme here. I don't really have, that's a lie, I do have one more tweed yarn with fun colorful specks, which is basically the same one, also the Rico Superba tweed, just that the base color is dark blue. And I might make some socks out of that for my partner. I'm really in a sock knitting mood right now, hand in hand with Socktober. So, but even if I don't get to those this month, I'm really looking forward to making him another pair. And that concludes my finished objects. I do have a few works in progress. It's always so hard to say this. Works in progress, not works in project, to show. And I'm gonna get started with the one that I cast on first out of those. And this, if you have seen my autumn plans, fall plans video, which was the last video that I uploaded, then you will already have seen part of this. This is the Fennel Seed Jacket by Florence Miller, who is handmade by Florence here on YouTube. This is one of the projects that is always a bit harder to show on camera just because the color is quite dark and then you don't see the stitch pattern super well, but I'm gonna try to show it to you properly. So the yarn that I'm using is Rauma Fennel in the colorway 6, I believe, but again, I will put the colorway also in my Ravelry page. It's this gorgeous kind of like dark red wine burgundy color that I'm absolutely in love with. And the yarn, I can also show you the one ball. It is the colorway 6, I just double checked. The yarn, that's what it looks like in ball form. It's 100% Norwegian lamb's wool. It's the first time I'm knitting with this yarn and with a Rauma yarn in general. I picked this up at one of my local yarn shops, my Ivory Room here in London, and Valentina gave me great advice for using this yarn, how much, because she made the same cardigan in a different colored yarn, but also Rauma Fennel, and I'm really loving it. I'm really loving the feel of it. It's kind of, it's not super rustic, but definitely more rustic than a merino, obviously. It has this great, like, lofty quality. In that regard, it reminds me a little bit of Peruvian Highland wool. I knit with Cascade 220 before, the non-superwash version, and I'm getting a slightly similar feeling from these two yarns, and I really, really, really like that kind of yarn. I see myself knitting much more with this in the future as well. So much for the yarn. Regarding the pattern itself, so you can see I'm actually already pretty far. I just finished binding off the body today, and I already knit the sleeves before, so all that I have left to do is the button band and the collar. It's pretty hard to show, but the pattern is it's a raglan construction. You can see these raglan lines here, which I find a very, very pretty detail. I always really like when designers, when it's not just one raglan stitch that kind of like goes down the yoke, but there's something in the raglan stitch, or there's several of them, just to give it kind of like a chunkier raglan line. I really like that. And here the whole cardigan, except for the finishing, is knit in broken rib, which I find an absolutely beautiful stitch pattern. I knit a sweater, I was gonna say sweater, no, I knit a vest in broken rib before, And also there, I just really like what it looks like. The making of it is a bit of a love-hate relationship for me, because I don't like knitting one by one rib. At least that's something that I always think, but if I have to do it for a while and I get into the groove of it, I actually don't mind it so much. And especially for a cardigan where you would be, if you would be knitting stockinette, you would knit one row and then purl the row back. Here it's basically, instead of purling the row back, you did do the knit one, purl one. So it's not as annoying as with a sweater where you could just be knitting in the round the whole time, but then if you decide to do a broken rib, every other round is different, and a cardigan, every other round is different anyway, so it doesn't feel like such a big effort. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I kind of like this for the cardigan more than I did for the vest. And I did not modify a lot based on the pattern so far, except again knitting the ribbing inside out, at least on the sleeves. Like if it's in the round, the body ribbing obviously is back and forth, and there I didn't do it. And I knitted much shorter than suggested in pattern, because I really wanted a cardigan that hits basically just above my hip bone. Something that is kind of short, that works really well with skirts, high-waisted jeans, and that just doesn't flow down as much. So that's why I finished much earlier. I also picked up less yarn because of that, so I am kind of playing a game of yarn chicken, just because I don't know how much the button band and collar will take, but I do have enough yarn, hopefully, left for that, and I'll be doing that soon. I also already have buttons picked out for it. Still deciding between two different ones, but I think I'm going to talk about that in the episode when you see the finished object, because otherwise I don't have anything new to talk about that I didn't tell you yet. So yeah, and the one thing I'm still thinking about is whether I will put 6 buttons as suggested in the pattern or only 5, because I shortened it. I think I'm gonna lay it out later today and just see how it looks like with 5 or 6 buttons and how I would have to space them out so that it looks nice. All of this to say that I am really enjoying this project, and I really enjoyed knitting on it so far. I went pretty quickly through the yoke because I was really curious to see how it would grow on my needles, and I'm just really liking it. I'm gonna get a bit closer just so you see the stitch pattern a bit better and try to catch the light. So there you go. I think this is how you can see it quite well. I'm really curious also how this yarn looks like when I block it, because with my gauge swatch it softened up a little bit and bloomed really nicely, so I'm really looking forward to just see how this one will turn out once it's blocked. Alright, continuing in order of casting on projects. The other work in progress that I currently have on my needles is the Rainy Day Tea by Sari Nordland. This is a pattern that she released in end of August, beginning of September, I believe. And it's I'm just gonna hold it up so you already see a bit of it. It's basically a t-shirt with a raglan t-shirt where the raglan, there's this cable on the raglan, as you can see here, on both sides, obviously also on the back. And I just really fell in love with the look of it when she came out with this pattern. So I wanted to make one myself. I also mentioned this one in my fall knitting plans. And I just separated for sleeves this morning. In September, mid-September, I went on a little holiday with my partner and my parents, and I knit on the yoke of this one then, and I knit almost the entire yoke then, but then when we got home I put it aside for a little bit to continue knitting the fennel seed jacket. But yeah, I'm very much enjoying this one. I really like dipping my toes into cable knitting without committing to a all over cable garment. I really enjoyed knitting on the cables here though, so I feel like I should maybe, as a next project, commit to a few more cables. And it doesn't look very, like the color looks very white at the moment. It does say in the pattern, however, that once you pick up the stitches and then knit the proper color, it'll be, yeah, look much more finished obviously, and it won't be as white as it looks now. So far I haven't adjusted much, except that I think I'm a much tighter knitter than Sari Nordland is, so I had to go up from a 3.5mm needle to a 4mm needle. Obviously I also chose a different yarn, and that might have influenced that. I am knitting, since we're talking about the yarn, I'm knitting with a John Arbon yarn. John Arbon, I think, is a British yarn company. I have it in ball, just hand wound here. I think I also have one skein that I can show you, so that's the yarn. And it's the colorway 46, which is this really, really nice marled soft green that I find absolutely gorgeous. I fell in love with it in the shop, and it is a fiber combination of 50% Blue-Faced Leicester and 50% Falklands Merino. When I felt it in the skein, I thought it might be a little bit, well, it is soft, but definitely more rustic, slightly rustic, and I thought it might be a bit too rustic to wear as a t-shirt, which is basically closer to the skin. But actually the knit up fabric seems really, really nice and soft to me, so I'm quite curious what it will be like blocked and everything, and how it will feel like on the skin. It's very, very enjoyable to knit with. I think now that I knit also these two kind of almost back to back, and then in between the Broken Rib cardigan, which is on slightly bigger needles, that my favorite needle size yarn thing is being able to knit on 4mm needles. For me, that just is the right amount of balance of making progress not too slowly, but also not having too chunky needles, and it just feels very relaxing on my wrists. So this is very, very nice to knit on. Other modifications that I did so far is just adding one more pattern repeat for before splitting for sleeves, just because my row gauge was much tighter than Sari Nordland, or the one that is suggested in the pattern, and I didn't want to make the yoke too short. And I am considering, instead of doing 1x1 rib for all the finishing that the pattern suggests, to maybe do 2x2 rib, just because I really like the look of 2x2 rib and I haven't done that in a while. But I will decide that, I think, once I'm closer to, yeah, knitting the collar, knitting the sleeves and so on. I think at the moment my priority is to finish the cardigan, and then I will be focusing on this one a little bit more, because I'm really looking forward to have a knitted t-shirt for autumn with these really pretty cables. Also, nothing really related to the knit, but I just really like pulling out seasonally appropriate needle stoppers. It's not that I have one for every season, but I'm very much enjoying these acorn ones that I bought last year at some point. So they are not new, I've had them for a while and I've been using them for a while, but it was just really nice to pull them out now for autumn again. By the way, I have all my notes for this episode in this notebook, where I'm always taking down knitting notes when it's not in my phone. So love the design of this one. Right, so the last work in progress that I can share with you today, the last work in progress that I have also, is a pair of socks that I'm knitting on. And I got really obsessed knitting this sock. So I have the first one done. I cast this on a Sunday night, and these were done on a Thursday morning. I just got really obsessed with making progress with these socks. So this is the first one. It's unblocked. It's in a 3x1 rib pattern. That's why it looks very much not leg-sized or foot-sized and kind of shrunk together. But I have tried them on. They do fit me. Obviously with the blocking it might relax a little bit, and rib always, yeah, just grips here like really nicely. So the socks, I basically didn't follow a specific pattern. It's just a vanilla sock. I did 11 rounds of ribbing at the top, just 1x1 rib, and then changed the yarn, went into 3x1 rib, did a heel flap and gusset construction, and knit to the length of my foot, and then changed into the other color again. What is different about this one? Usually I knit my socks on 2.25mm needles. I have these small circular bamboo needles that I really like, but for the first time now I just tried out 2.5mm metal circulars, because I had them for some color work that I did, sock color work. I never knitted a full sock on those, but this one was the first full sock that I knit on those, and I'm really enjoying them. I think I have, yeah, I just like the feel of the metal. I also like having my bamboo needles because that makes it easier for traveling, but I also like working with these. And as you can see, I already cast on the second one just, I think, a day or two ago, and I'm making my way through that one. So here I am using a Filcolana Arwetta wool for the cuff. It's this one. It's really nice green. And the colorway, let me just check, is 147. And then the main yarn that I'm using is this yarn. It is called Footprints by the company Lang, and it has this almost like hand-spun look, like this, two differently colored strands twisted together. They have other really pretty colorways of this yarn as well. I own another one that to me is more spring-like because it has more yellow and lavender in it, but I really like this autumnal one as well. This one is the colorway 115, and as you can see, it's just a really nice combination of lighter and darker greens, some browns and oranges. And I think the reason why this sock was popcorn knitting was just because I wanted to know and see how this pattern grows on my needles and how the colors of the sock play out. So yeah, that's basically, I think, almost I have to say about this. No, actually not quite. In my kind of obsessive way of knitting this one, I did make, I think, 1 or 2 mistakes. One was somewhere here that I, instead of knitting 3 and then purling 1 for a few rows, I knitted 4 and purled 1, but just on like one side of the sock, so it's not super visible. I don't really care much about that. I also kind of messed up the toe decreases. I had suddenly too many stitches on one needle and too few on the other, so I think I must have decreased 2 in a row on one needle. I'm not sure what I did there. When I was knitting in the round here, all of it was fine. It's just up here I messed something up, but again, I don't mind so much. I just knitted a few more together to be able to then Kitchener stitch the end tip of the toe. But yeah, again, I don't mind. I hope I don't make these mistakes for the second one, but if I do, at least they match. If not, no one's going to be able to see it anyways. But I'm really happy with this sock and really looking forward to wear it this autumn. And I think that's why I kind of want to work as quickly as I can on the second one as well, so I can hopefully still wear it in October. And that concludes my works in progress. I have a few acquisitions as well. Well, the Rainy Day Tee yarn and the cardigan yarn were both new acquisitions, but you already saw them, so I don't really have to talk more about those. Then other yarns that I got was just in my local yarn shop. I got some new white sock yarn. This is the Yaval yarn by Lamb. It's a classic 75% wool, 25% polyamide yarn. It's just because I was running low on the kind of white cream color that I usually use, so I picked up a new one. This is not like a stark white. I think it's just a kind of like a natural colorway, not a bright white, kind of a little bit cream leaning, which I usually like more. No specific plans for those, just I have a few socks on my list that either have some color work or, and as a kind of base color, I want to make it white or cream, and I think it's just good to have enough of that at home to cast on whatever sock I want. Another sock yarn I picked up is this West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply in the colorway Butterscotch. It's also 75% wool, and some content of that is BFL, I think, and 25% nylon. I knit with this yarn before, one sock that still needs a second one. Well, actually I'm halfway done with the second one, but I just abandoned it at some point. Should finish that one. I also knit another pair of socks with all with different colors. They have a really nice kind of orange browny color that is called, I think the colorway is Nutmeg, that I really like. And I just wanted to have one more kind of commercial sock yarn that I know I enjoyed knitting with in my stash. I don't have specific plans for this one either, but I'm thinking maybe another cabled sock could be nice for this one, or one more sock from the 52 Weeks of Socks book that I have. At the moment I'm not super keen on colorwork socks and more on stitch patterns or interesting like cables, lace, whatever. Maybe that'll change again. Yeah, that's another addition. And then I also got this sock yarn that is by the brand Uncommon Thread. It's the base Tough Sock, which is 80% superwash blue-faced Leicester and 20% nylon. I feel like this episode is very blue-faced Leicester leaning, which is kind of nice because I do enjoy that yarn base a lot. So I'm happy to have found several iterations of it. This is the colorway Coven, and I was just looking for a nice black yarn that, being hand-tied, might have a tiny bit of kind of like how it catches the light differently. I have an idea for a pair of half fingerless mitts that I want to make as a Christmas present, and I wanted to make them in black, but I also wanted something that can withstand a little bit of like friction and movement as you use your hands. So that's why this one was the one that I found in my yarn shop. And when I turn it around, it wasn't easy to find a good black yarn for that purpose, because of a lot of the yarns that I looked at either only had dark grays that were obviously grays, or like dark brown that were obviously brown and couldn't pass for black. And then some of the other yarns I checked that had black yarns was really kind of like they didn't have a lot of luster. Like this one catches the light in a nice way. It's not that it looks fully glossy, but there's some luster to it, which I like. But some of the other yarns that I looked at were more kind of like a dull, muted black, which was just not something that I had in mind. Anyways, I've never used Uncommon Thread yarn before. They have other really nice yarn colorways as well that I saw, but I just picked up this one because I really needed a black one. And that is all for new acquisitions. I'm gonna go into some recommendations now as well. One of them I did actually talk about before, which is this book Wintering. I talked about it, I think, in a winter podcast episode when I was reading it. I finished this at the beginning of the year, but I just picked it out again because I feel like the change of seasons, at least in the Northern Hemisphere right now, towards the colder months and also darker months, is a very good moment to read this book. It does start, because it goes through the seasons, and it does start in October, and actually the prologue is in September, but it starts in October and starts with kind of like making ready for the colder season. So if you don't know this book yet and you are curious about it or have had it on your list, now might be a good moment to start. Essentially, just to tell you a little bit more what it's about, it's kind of a memoir, not fully about the author's life all the time, but it is about her experience going from end of September to, I think, March, so going through one winter, and she just reflects on this kind of like quieter time of life, the cyclical nature of life and how seasons change, and in general how maybe lower energy winters aren't necessarily a bad thing. There can be interesting things about them as well. She also interviews people from different cultures to kind of see how they deal with the cold and with the lack of light. And I just really, it was really a nice book. It's not necessarily a self-help book, but she writes really beautifully, and it just inspired me to think a little bit more about reframing my kind of lower energy state in winter a little bit, and just also, yeah, you find different activities in there. It's not, again, it's not a self-help book. She doesn't tell you do this or do that to feel better, but it's just a nice way of hearing from someone how they experience those months, and like really reflective and everything, really quiet. I really liked it, so maybe this is something for you as well. Changing gears a bit to another book that I enjoyed but has really nothing to do with the kind of like quiet memoir style is an audiobook that I listened to, and the book is called Every Time I Go on Vacation Someone Dies. The author is Katherine May, and it's basically a murder mystery that is set on the coast of Italy. It's about a crime writer who is on book tour, and she basically wrote a crime murder mystery series based on some own events that she experienced, featuring her ex-boyfriend, and her ex-boyfriend is still around, also with her on book tour, and suspects that someone wants to kill him. And yeah, it's a bit hard to summarize, but it's a really fun murder mystery with lots of kind of like meta-fiction elements, because the main character in the book is an author herself. Obviously, so it's a book about a book and a book about an author. You have footnotes all over the book of the author kind of like commenting on her own narrative and breaking through the fourth wall, which is very fun. And this also was implemented super well in the audiobook. I really liked the narrator and how she implemented footnotes, which obviously in a written text you can see at the bottom, how she implemented those into her narrative voice. That was very interesting to listen to and very fun. I listened a lot to this while knitting, and I just really like murder mysteries when they're not, yeah, when they're really more on the mystery side, maybe if there's a little bit of comedy involved, not very graphic or dramatic, and this one just was a really good mix of it. I also know that there's going to be a second part coming, so I'm curious and looking forward to that one. And then we've had a memoir, non-fiction, we've had a murder mystery. I also have a romance rom-com recommendation for you, which is For Weekends and a Funeral. It's a book, I always want to say For Weddings and a Funeral, but that's the movie. For Weekends and a Funeral is the book. It's by the author Ellie and is about, how do I explain the setup? Okay, so basically the main character used to date this guy, and the guy passes away, and she goes to the funeral, but her, well, the parents of his parents, his family still believes that they are still together, although they broke up, so it's kind of like a fake dating situation with one part of the couple not in the picture anymore. There is, however, someone else kind of on the stage that the main character develops feelings for, and although the setup sounds pretty dark because it starts at a funeral, overall I would say it is still quite a humorous book. I also really liked getting some insights into the main character's experience with carrying the BRCA gene, so breast cancer gene. She doesn't have cancer herself, but it's kind of detected that she has a high risk of developing it. So it's also about going through double mastectomy, and just I really like when I read romance books about people that have experienced certain things and that this is part of the whole narrative. I always find this very interesting to kind of get a insight into that through a story that is overall centered around love and joy, because that way it balances out the heavier topics quite nicely as well. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book and would highly recommend it. And that's all for my recommendations. And in terms of my own writing, I am writing another book. I think I talked last about this about half a year ago, how I started a new draft. I'm not working on that draft anymore. I just really didn't feel the story that I was writing on and kind of abandoned it after 25,000 words, which was weird to have put some work into it already and then realizing that I was really just not feeling it. But at the same time, I had an idea that really hooked me, so I am writing on that one now, and I'm almost halfway through my first draft. It's weird. I wrote in a kind of like fever dream the first days, and then it got a bit slower. I am making steady progress. I like the story. I don't like the way it's executed on the page right now, because it's a very bland way of describing it, but that's just how I have to go through my first draft, it seems. I was kind of blocked for a little while just because I saw kind of like the word count grow on the page, that my draft was growing, but I didn't really feel like I was getting a hang of the story and an understanding of the story, and it's just really frustrating because it feels like all of these words are probably words that I'll have to throw out at the end at some point anyways when I revise. But obviously I won't get a hang of the story by not writing. So now I'm at a point where I'm kind of comfortable with not knowing all the time what's going on, and I feel that's kind of a natural step for me within a first draft, that I start off super excited, then I tap in the dark for a while and I get really worried about it and wonder how everything will come together and if I made a big mistake in just starting this draft, and everything very dramatic. And then at some point I'm just like, okay, we don't have to have it figured out. That's what the first draft is for. We're figuring it out right now, and every word that I write helps me do that. So that's the stage I'm at. It's not a great draft, but I'm having mostly fun. I like the themes that are starting to emerge in the story as well. So that's quite nice. I hope I'm going to be able to tell you more about this in future episodes, but at the moment I feel like I really need to write and see where all of this is going before I can fully express what it's all about. It is a rom-com. It has some sciencey elements to it, so that's kind of similar to the first book I wrote, but everything else we'll have to see. I am also toying around with the idea of a murder mystery. I would really love to write one in the near future. I have some ideas for it, but I need to finish this one first and give it my full focus, and then everything else can happen later. Yeah, that's about it. As I said, I'm really happy about the change of seasons right now. I love autumn. I don't love the lack of light that will come upon us at some point, but I'm trying not to think about that too much and really just enjoying what I love about autumn. I went to the farmer's market yesterday, bought some apples there. I always love proper apples that are not like supermarket apples, because supermarket apples just don't have, here at least, they don't have as strong of a flavor, and like the ones that you pick, the ones that you get from the farmer's market, whatever, just are proper apples. I love them. Also got a pumpkin, so I'm gonna make some nice pumpkin soup now, I think, with some ginger, some coconut milk, lots of garlic. That's gonna be my plan for the rest of the Sunday, to make a nice soup, because I really like soup season. And that's it. That's really it. We're moving house soon, so I have to see when my next episode will come and how chaotic that will get. But I'm really excited about that too. And let's see when I film the next time. If you have suggestions for video ideas, things that you would like to see, please let me know below in the comments. Also feel free to let me know what you're working on at the moment, what parts of autumn you are very excited for. I just really like chatting with you in the comments, so I'm always happy if you leave a comment afterwards. And obviously it always helps if you like, subscribe, share the video if you enjoyed it. And I think I'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a cozy time watching this video, and I will see you in a new video, hopefully sometime soon. Happy Socktober, happy October, and happy autumn. Bye bye.